Hello, everyone. This is the first class of the 2025 NHSS SPE membership program. And today I'm going to take the opportunity to provide some insight on how to create a Spiritualis customized blend. Now, this is a blend that was actually not customized to one particular individual, but to a particular situation. So technically, it's what is referred to in Spiritualis as a situational blend rather than an individualized, customized. But if it's done properly, you can make it relevant for a larger group of people. This particular blend I formulated for use by a group of practitioners in the Los Angeles area to help people who have been traumatized by the recent wildfires there. So normally in Spiritualis, well, when I first developed Spiritualis in practice, it was with the idea of creating customized blend for one particular individual, as opposed to an entire group of people, which you can't individualize because everybody's different. Everybody's a different soul and has a different soul nature and so forth. So the idea with situational blending is that you customize it to the extent of the situation. You form it to the situation. And if it's well formulated, then anyone who's affected by that situation, vis-a-vis that customization, it will have relevance for those individuals and will be able to exert some type of positive impact upon them on a soul level. Now, this is a trauma blend. So the idea here would be to remove the layer of trauma, or to at least reduce the layer of trauma. The thing about trauma is you cannot remove the imprint of trauma. Once the trauma has made its imprint on a person, it's constitutional. And like anything constitutional, you can't remove constitutional elements. But what you can do is you can remove the active impact of that on an individual. In other words, people have traumas throughout their lives. Some people have traumatized childhoods and so forth, but they can function at a much higher level if the actions, the activity of that, the talons can be removed or the venom withdrawn, but the actual impression on the constitution will still be there, but it'll be quiescent, it'll be in remission and not be affecting the individual. So if these people will be using the blend experience a similar trauma somewhere down the road, then it can reactivate this one. But for now, being released from the grip of the trauma will enable them to be able to heal in a more efficient way, in a way that shortens the time of psychospiritual repair. So my expectation is not for anyone who's watching this video to actually prepare this blend. This is not a group project like we've done in the past. This is simply something that I'm taking this opportunity, since I recently formulated this blend, to show you how I did it. And by showing you how the blend has been formulated, you can learn some insight, through some insight into how Spiritualis blend formulation is actually done. So some of you who do live in the LA area and would like to prepare this blend, sure, you'll have the ability to do that after watching this video, and you'll be getting the blueprint for preparing this blend and the instructions on how to use it. So sure, by all means, if you have the desire and the wherewithal to do it, then by all means do. But for the rest of you who are not preparing the blend, you'll learn how to go about this. Now, when you're preparing a blend for one individual, your goal is to create a portrait in oils of who this person is on a soul level. And the more accurate that portrait is, the more deep acting the blend will be on this deep soul level, and will enable them to move forward on this deeper actualization level to overcome stuckness, to overcome inertia in their solar hero's journey, in their journey towards wholeness of being. That's what the PhytoEssencing customized blends are for. Now, in this particular case, as noted, we're doing this for a situation rather than for an individual. But if it's customized really beautifully for that situation, if it's done very effectively, and covers squares that a lot of them have been walking upon, then they will be able to plug into the blend, and it will transfuse their souls with the energy of the blend in a more or less deep soul level healing manner. Again, you cannot remove a trauma. The imprint is constitutional, but you can remove the impact of the trauma. You can free the person from the trauma. That trauma can be reactivated by future traumas, especially if they're of a similar nature. But this freeing at this point in time contemporaneously will allow the healing process to proceed more smoothly. So with that said, let's take a look and see how this is done. So the first thing I just want to review real briefly, for those of you who are not, I should say here that it's been a while since I've done this type of thing, and I forgot that I have to actually go to share to do this. So let's go to share, and let's go to the Repertory. Now, this Repertory is the 2025 edition, which won't be available probably until the fall. It's not only a repertory, but it's also a case study manual, which teaches you precisely how to formulate blends. I would say it's going to be, quote unquote, the Bible, Spiritual Essential blending, understanding how to do it, all the various aspects that you need to understand and need to understand how to proceed are all given here in a step-by-step manner, and you'll be able to prepare very high quality spiritual essential blends with this book as being your guide all the way through. But with that said, I'm not going to go into the rest of this manual today. I'm just going to go into some of how the rubric or repertory section works. Now, many of you are already familiar with all of this, so this will serve as a review. But for those of you who are new members and you're not really understanding, well, what is a repertory and what do you do with it? This particular class will be invaluable for you if you want to prepare spiritual essential custom blends. So let's take a look at something. There are three types of rubrics that you will find in the repertory. The first are called general rubrics. General rubrics means that they are relevant for both the physical and the mental emotional spheres, mental/emotional spheres. So for instance, this is a rubric: activity, desire for. In other words, a person has desire for activity. The title, activity, and desire for. This is a sub-rubric of the general rubric. Activity has all these oils listed below, and in concert, the title and the list of oils is referred to as a rubric. In order to be able to determine which oils will populate your blend list that you're going to include inside your blend, the ingredients of your custom blend, you have to have a filtration process. How do I get from the idea of wanting to create a blend for trauma victims relative to a forest fire or a wildfire? How do I get to that? And so you start off in spiritual essential. There are 125 essential oils that we work with, and we want to get down to just a much smaller list to include on our blend. So we have a filtration process, and that filtration process begins with the use of rubrics in conjunction with each other. So I have to go through this repertory and determine, well, which rubrics am I going to use? And in a little while, I will show you how that is done. Now, I didn't choose this rubric, but I'm just showing this to you as an example. Now, in addition to general rubrics, and I'm not going to scroll through all of this because it's very long and it would take too much time up on this recording to scroll through it and show you the other rubrics. But I will say, in addition to general rubrics, there are the emotional, the mentals, emotional rubrics, and there are the physicals rubrics. So the mental emotionals are purely mental and emotional symptoms, rubrics regarding mental and emotional symptoms and qualities. And the physical rubrics are purely physical symptoms and qualities. The general rubrics, as I said, applies to both both emotionals and mentals and physicals. So for instance, activity, desire for, this could be that your body just feels like it needs to run or it needs to stretch. I can just feel I really need to stretch. I really need to, I'm just, I need to get out and do something. I'm tired of sitting around. On an emotional, physical level, the activity desire for is, I have to distract myself. I can't be sitting around thinking about this anymore. I'm not getting anywhere with this. It's just really starting to wear me out. Let me go out and just do something. I'll go out, I'll mow the lawn, I'll paint the fence, I'll do something. So the same thing is true for any of these rubrics. Let's say, for instance, it's the one down here, such as ailments, periodicity of annually. And what that means, and let's make that a little larger so you can see this better. Go to 14 on this. Ailments, periodicity of annually, which means every year around the same time, the person gets sick. The same thing comes up. Well, this could be depression on the emotional side, or it could be hay fever on the physical side. So this is a general's rubric that whatever that ailment happens to be, is a periodicity to it, and it happens annually around the same time, same period. Okay, so that's what a repertory is. I'm not going to do any more on the repertory right now. I'm going to go to a new share, and we're going to begin to understand, well, which rubrics I chose and why. So let's go to another share. So this document you're actually going to receive. This document will be in the members zone. And you'll be able to download it and keep it and read it and learn from it and so forth and study it. Now, most of you are well aware that both my naturopathic work and my spiritual phytoessencing work is a blend of Eastern medicine and Western medicine, or Eastern understanding, philosophy, grounding, and Western. And so what you're going to be seeing here is a combination of both. There will be quite a bit of the Chinese medicine understanding and quite a bit of the Western medicine understanding that went into the formulation of this blend. So the name of the blend that I formulated is called City of Angels Wildfire Trauma Relief Blend. And this is the formulation details. Now, the first thing we're going to start with are the 5 elements, and you'll find out why in just a few moments. So in Chinese medicine, one of the models, and I've studied this extensively, one of my mentors in acupuncture, who was my mentor for about 6 years, was a principal of an acupuncture school that taught 5-element acupuncture. And so this is one of the systems that I've studied a lot and used a lot. And so I've incorporated that into my work in both the naturopathic work, the natural health science system work, and in the spiritual phytoessencing work. According to the Chinese, all the phenomena within the natural world involves an interaction between five basic elements: fire, earth, metal, water, and wood. Each of these elements is associated with all different types of qualities and symptoms and so forth. And it's not our purpose here today to really discuss what those are. That will come in future classes. I will be getting into that in a deeper level. But as you can see, there are these various arrows in this circle here and this star here, and these aren't just designs. They mean something. And we're going to see what they mean. So each of the five elements, which are also referred to as the five phases, describes how each element has its own characteristic associations, such as directional orientation, east, west, north, south, and so forth. Season, water element, for instance, is summer, and fire element is, water element is winter, and fire element is summer, and so forth. Color, wood element is green, earth element is yellow, different, so on and so forth. And within the human organism, each element is associated with specific organs and physiological activities and emotions. And accordingly, imbalances among the elements is a primary etiological factor, in other words, developmental factor, in physical and emotional disorders. Thus, the primary therapeutic goal is to reestablish equilibrium among the five elements. So now, two of the basic principles in five element theory is the creation cycle and the control cycle. Okay, let's take a look at those. We're going to skip through this. You can read the text on your own. The Sheng cycle is the generating or creating cycle, where one element creates another element. For instance, water. This is called mother-child relationships within the generating or creation cycle. Water generates wood in the same way that rain hydrates plants. Without rain, without water, there is no wood. You have no trees, you have no grasses, you have no plants. They require water. So water is the mother of wood. Without water, there is no child, there is no wood. Wood, on the other hand, generates fire. If you've ever gone camping, you know you build a fire using wood. You gather wood and it creates fire. So wood is the fuel or the mother of fire. Fire generates earth. The element of fire generates the element of earth, is the mother of earth. How? Well, when fire burns the wood, it creates an ash, the product of the burned wood, and this becomes a component of the soil. The ash becomes a component of soil. When there is a forest fire, a wildfire, whatever natural plants and plant life was destroyed becomes ash, and that ash then penetrates back into the soil and becomes part of earth. Earth, on the other hand, generates metal. If you've ever seen these reports or movies on TV where people are in these steel manufacturing plants with these giant furnaces, you know that using tremendous amount of heat, you take certain elements and you create metal from those earth elements. So earth is the mother of metal. And metal, if you heat it sufficiently, thousands of degrees Fahrenheit, becomes liquid. And metal will generate water in the same way that water condenses on a metal surface. The metal surface is cool. The warmer air hits the metal surface, and the water then becomes watery. It moves from being sort of a vaporous gas into being liquid water. So this is the creation cycle, or the generating cycle among the five elements. On the other hand, there's a control cycle as well. So let's take a look at that. And here you can see the cycle. Here's the creation cycle. This is wood, creates fire. Fire burns the wood, creates earth. Earth gets superheated, you create metal. Very hot molten metal becomes liquid, becomes water or liquid. Water is the mother of wood. But then we have these arrows here in the middle. And these arrows are part of the control cycle. So you can see the outer arrows of the creation cycle. Wood is the mother of fire, fire is the mother of earth, and so forth. And here we have the control cycle in the middle. So let's take a look and see what that means. So in the control cycle, the control relationships are fire controls metal in the way that very intense heat is used in foundries to melt metal. So fire can control metal, can melt it. It can take it from form and loosen or reduce its form. Control. Metal, on the other hand, can control wood in the same way that a metal saw, can cut wood into pieces. Metal controls wood. Wood controls earth as tree roots emerge through and divide sections of soil. In the same way that tree roots can emerge from the soil and break up the soil, wood controls earth, or a wooden fence splits one section of land from another section of land. It can control the land in that sense. Earth controls water in the way that soil will absorb water, or a dam can hold water back. An earthen dam can hold water back. Even when it's made of cement, it's basically concrete, I should say. It's basically earth that's made in hardened earth is what you make concrete from. And of course, the one that everybody knows, water controls fire. You can use water to extinguish a fire. So in the control cycle, as we can see here, water controls fire. Metal controls wood. Wood controls earth. Fire controls metal. And I don't know if I left anything out here. And earth controls water. So with that said, why am I going into all of this? Well, let's see. As we go on here, you'll begin to get the feel of why I'm going in this direction. So the first series of rubrics that I used were based upon control cycle and creation cycle. So let's take a look and see what I mean by that. So I went to the Repertory, which I demonstrated just a little while ago. And the first element I took was fire element. At this point, I have to remind you that this blend is a trauma relief blend for those people who are traumatized by the ravages of a wildfire. So I'm using fire element. I'm setting the stage, so to speak, setting the scene with a fire element. Everything's going to play from fire. It's the fire that has caused the trauma. So we start with fire element. What do we want to do if we want to try to assuage the impact, the negative impact of that fire? Well, let's control it. And in the control cycle, water controls fire. So I did what's called a rubric overlay, 2 rubrics in a row, and I line them up vertically on a blank page, copy and paste them from the Repertory, copy them from the Repertory and paste them onto the blank sheet. And I see, well, which oils are redundant in the lower rubric. So here are all the oils, starting with Amivisnaga and the fire element, ending with Yara. And I put this one underneath, and I look here to there, and I see which oils occur in both of these rubrics. And I highlight them. And as you can see here, only some of these oils are showing up, not all of them. And I've reduced it from maybe 65 oils up here, let's say, down to perhaps 50 oils here. Not enough. You still need to reduce this more, but nevertheless, it's a start. And this first rubric overlay is called the wellhead. This is, we're starting here at the wellhead. We're just starting where the water begins to emerge. The waters of the formulation begin to emerge from the ground, so to speak. Now, the oils that survive the filtration process in each of these overlays are rubric chains. A rubric overlay involves only 2 rubrics. A rubric chain involves more, 3 or more rubrics in a row. A vertical filtration chain of rubrics is called a rubric chain. A filtration process that involves only 2 rubrics is referred to as an overlay. And you can see these oils in blue are all the ones that occurred in this water element rubric that were highlighted. So this is our first possibles list that says what it's called possibles list because it says this is possible. These oils are possibilities to be in this blend, but we don't know. We're just saying it's possible. We're not saying they're in, they're possible. So now we have a second overlay, and this is the mother-child creation cycle reduction overlay. This is a little bit more technical to understand, but I will do my best to explain this in a way that's fairly simple to understand. Fire is the mother of earth. Fire burns wood, creates ash, which builds earth. Therefore, fire in the creation cycle is the mother of earth. When a mother gives birth, well, even before she gives birth, we can use the example of when the child is in utero, but let's just go to after first, just to make this a little bit clearer. And she begins to breastfeed the child. The child is drawing from the mother. Mother is fire, earth is child. The mother, let's say, this is mother and this is the child. The breastfeeding child will draw nutrients and vital reserves from the mother. And in the process, the mother will be reduced. She'll become depleted in some way. She'll lose some of her reserves. And if she's not eating well and otherwise taking care of herself in a natural, healing, healthy way, she may very well become very depleted. It was not unusual back in the 19th century or even to this day in countries where there is scarcity of food and so forth, when the mother is dedicated to keeping the child alive, that she really depletes herself, spares herself for the children, that she saves the food for the children and depletes herself, gives from her own supply of food that she desperately needs, or if she's breastfeeding and really hasn't had the nutrition to build her body, and those nutrients are going towards the production of breast milk rather than for the reconstitution of her own tissues, the mother will become depleted. So by using earth element, we can pull away from the fire. We can make the fire less. The effect of the fire on these individuals who are traumatized by it, we can reduce its impact by doing a rubric where we're using the child to reduce the mother. So this is wellhead. This is still part of the wellhead section of this. We can use the wellhead possibles list number 2. Here we see it. These are the redundant oils that were both in fire element and earth element. And here is wellhead possibles list number 2. And these are the oils that are in this possibles list. Again, they're possibilities, but that doesn't mean that they're in. It just means we're beginning the filtration process and reducing the number of oils that we're going to select from. Now we're moving to a split stream rubric chain. As you can see in this picture that I selected here, split stream. Here's the large stream, and here it splits into two branches. Let's see what that means. So I took the first wellhead possibles list, number one, from the control cycle, up at the top, fire element and water element, and here it is. Here's that possibles list. And I chose certain rubrics. Chose grief. People have lost their houses, all their belongings, things that had tremendous sentimental value. In some cases, they lost people in their families. They had possibly have lost pets. So there's grief. And I took trauma. They were clearly traumatized. So this general rubric. And so basically what we have here first is we started with this. Wellheads possibles list number one, and we started creating a rubric chain. Filtered this rubric down to fewer oils. And I chose grief, trauma. So now trauma, as you can see here, I not only highlighted it in bold, I also underlined it to show you the progression of the filtration, how it's progressing. So grief, and then I added another link into the rubric chain. And you can see how now this possibles list with all these oils, let's say this is about 50 oils or so, has been reduced with these two links down to perhaps 15, a little bit more than that maybe. So we're already reducing, we're filtering down how many oils we're going to be considering. And then I chose the rubric Dreams of Fire. So you can use this in a general sense. You can use the dreams rubrics. You can't find a rubric that fits on a conscious, everyday, physical body, emotional, mental level. You can use dreams rubrics. It's not as good, but you can use them. But here it's a double entendre. It'll serve as a general marker for fire, but at the same time, some people are going to be having nightmares about the fire, or the fire itself was a nightmare of sorts. And it's a smaller rubric. As you can see, this is a very big rubric with lots of oils. This is a smaller rubric, has fewer oils, and you can see now how we've reduced that original possibles list down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, just 8 oils. Started with about 50. Now we're down to 8. And I added in one more small, you notice I line my smaller rubrics at the end. If you put your smaller rubrics at the beginning of your rubric chain, you'll end up with fewer selections at the end. So start with the larger palette of oils and reduce that large palette down to a smaller palette using lining your smaller rubrics up at the end of the chain. And then I chose recovery, doubtful recovery about. So the house is burned down, the car is burned up, all your belongings are gone. You didn't really have as much fire insurance as you would have hoped. The dog was lost, and you're doubtful, will I ever get over this? You have those doubts. I don't think I'm ever going to get past this. I don't know how I'm going to move on. I don't know how I can do it. So I chose that rubric as the final rubric in this first rubric chain. Now, if you notice, I'm customizing how my selection of rubrics is very careful to customize. And I came up with the possibles list number one. This is the possibles list number one, final filtration set. So for that first possibles list, fire element, water element, we ended up here. And this is how we filtered down to this. blue chamomile, cinnamon, cistus, cypress, rosewood, turmeric, and yarrow. So you see how effective, if you're choosing your rubrics correctly, you can see how effective this filtration process can be in reducing or narrowing your focus down to just a few oils. That doesn't mean these are in. This is still a possibles list. It's not saying these are in the blend. It's saying, look, okay, we went through this. These survived the filtration process. We're going to look at those, and I'll show you how we'll look at them a little bit later. Or at least discuss it anyway. Now, moving on. So the second possibles list was, related to the mother-child reduction, fire, earth. Fire is the mother of earth. Earth is the child of fire. The child of fire is being used to reduce the vitality of the mother, in the case, the fire. And what did I do? I used the very same rubrics. See, I took the stream and I split it among these two possibles lists, the two wellhead possibles lists. First, I did a filtration of the first possibles list. Now I'm doing a filtration of the second possibles list using the same rubrics because it's the same circumstances. I'm seeing how it filters. Here it is, dreams of fire. The reason it repeats is because I'm going from one page to the next, and I want to show you how I did it. Doubtful about recovery. And here is possibles list number 2. And again, this is a possibles list. So now we have possibles list number 1 and possibles list number 2. You can see here, we have these two possibles lists now. Final filtration set from list number 1, the final filtration set from list number 2. They look very similar. You can see there's some overlays. There's a bit of difference here. There's no cistus in number 2, and there is no yarrow. But other than that, they are the same. So what you're now going to do is you're going to have a confluence possibles list. So what you did here is you split the stream, and now you bring that stream back together. You split the stream. Let's say the stream was like this on the other side of this little island over here. Let's say on this side it was a whole stream again, and then this island and the stream split the stream, and now you're bringing that together, and that's called a confluence, where you bring two streams together is a confluence. So getting back here, all right, so here we are. So here's the confluence possibles list. Now we're bringing them back together. And that is simply a combination combining these two filtration sets together, and here's your list. Okay, so I went, see now, well, this is manageable. Now I have only 7 oils, and I go to the chapters in my PhytoEssencing Materia Medica Spiritualis of Essential Oils, which there are 125 chapters, each chapter devoted to one essential oil. So you can take an in-depth look on who is blue chamomile? What is the deeper understanding of cinnamon that can be used as a soul level constitutional oil rather than something that's used just on the branch for symptoms? You're using it to deal with the root, to get to the root of the person, who that person is, who this oil is on that deep soul level, who is cinnamon as a soul, who is cistus as a soul, who is a cistus individual, who has a very strong amount of cypress in her constitution, and so forth. Each one of those chapters goes into great depth using a synergy of different understandings, including botany, the history of an oil, the history of its use, historically, herbal medicine, how the essential oil has been used in aromatherapy, what the homeopathic remedies that I associate with these oils, gemstones that I associate with these oils, Kabbalah, Chinese medicine, Western science, physiology, and so forth, to understand these oils on the deepest of the inner levels, rather than some superficial portrait be used just for symptomatic amelioration. And I went to these chapters and I read through them and I said, well, which ones really fit this case? And I went through them, and these are the ones that really fit the case well. So it started with blue chamomile, cinnamon, cistus cypress, rosewood, turmeric, and yarrow. As you can see here, they all survived except the yarrow. After I went to the chapters, all of these look, well, yeah, that seems relevant for this blend and for a person who's experienced this type of trauma. So those are in. So when you see standouts list means these are the keepers. These are the ones that made the team. They're going to be in the blend. So let's move on. So now I'm going to the mirroring rubric chain. And as you can see here in this picture, the lake, this placid surface of the lake, mirrors the trees all around. You can see a precise reflection of all the trees in the water and the sky and the clouds, mirroring rubric chain. So let's see what that means. So I am mirroring what these people maybe, and on some level, maybe not physical, in many cases, yes, physical, but also on some emotional level, as a direct result of fire and smoke, exposure to fire and smoke. So I'm going here to Chinese medicine patterns terminology. The first one is internal dryness. Heat is drying. So I chose the rubric internal dryness. Now these are patterns. In Chinese medicine, one of the major differences between Chinese medicine, one of the many major differences between Chinese medicine and conventional Western medicine, is in Western medicine, they typically treat symptoms. Oh, you have a cold, or you have sore throat, you have the flu, you have cholera, you have tuberculosis, spina bifida, whatever, Crohn's disease, whatever the symptom is, they target their treatments they tailor their treatments to the symptom. In Chinese medicine, they identify patterns that are going on within the individual, and they tailor their treatments to treat the patterns. And this is much more specifically root treatment than symptoms are. Symptoms are more branches treatment. This is root treatment. It's deeper acting to find the patterns. What's causing the dryness? How, what constitutes your dryness and what is its impact? Now, dryness is said in Chinese medicine to primarily affect the lungs, or most prominently affect the lungs. And of course, that fits really well in here because these people were breathing in a lot of the smoke from the wildfires. And just the whole LA area was inundated with smoke. So you would have dryness affecting the lungs. So I chose internal dryness. Of course, internal heat is that's a gimme. That's what else? It's a fire. Of course, there's going to be internal heat. It's hot. Flames, being around flames. So there are 6 pernicious influences in Chinese medicine: invasive external climatic factors that can cause disease, as heat, cold, dampness, dryness, wind, and summer heat. Personally, in my work, I don't really differentiate much between summer heat and heat. For me, I focus on heat, cold, dampness, dryness, and wind. Okay, so, and you can see here This is the individual, and these are the pernicious or pathogenic influences that can invade into the individual and cause problems inside the body. In other words, the climatic factors outside the body have the ability to penetrate the body's defenses and take seat inside the body. Dampness can move from the swampy area you live in or the muggy climate, and it can move into the inside of the body as well. Dryness, if you live in the desert or around a wildfire and you really got dried out, that dryness of the air can then move in and dry you out internally, and so on and so forth. They can all invade and do this. Now, you can generate cold internally as well. You can have endogenous. This is called exogenous from the outside. You can endogenously create wind inside the body. It's complicated. I'm not going to go into that today, but you can create dampness inside. For instance, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, inflammatory bowel diseases are heat damp conditions, according to the Chinese. So they would create both heat and damp would be generated inside the body, creating those intestinal disorders. You can create cold inside the body with poor circulation, and so on and so forth. Dryness by eating an overly dry diet without having fruits and vegetables and not drinking enough water, aging, decrease in hormones, and all of that. So internal heat which was the last rubric that we left off with. It started with internal dryness, and then we had internal heat, and these were the oils that survived that filtration of internal dryness and internal heat are the ones that are highlighted here. Then internal wind. Heat will create wind, but there's also wind. If you've ever been around fires, you can create wind from the fire, but one of the things that was really whipping these fires, why they were so destructive, and why the people who were fighting the fire were having so much difficulty in controlling it, is because the winds were 40, 50, 60 mile an hour gusts, maybe more. I don't recall precisely what, and they were spreading the fire very quickly. So internal wind, that wind also was internalized, got past people's guards, and they were affected by the wind both in a psychological way. They were afraid of the wind because of what it was doing to the fire, but it was also the wind could penetrate their defenses, which were already lowered by the stress of the situation, because normally the body protects itself or defends against invasion of these external pathogenic factors with mounting a chi defense. Your vital force, your chi, creates this invisible self-defense shield that protects and blocks the invasion of these external pathogenic influences. But once your chi is diminished through persistent stress, trauma, and grief, then these can penetrate, and the wind can now be internal wind, or the heat in the body can generate wind inside the body as well. That's called wind heat or heat wind. And here we have fire, visions of fire. We had dreams of fire. Now I'm using another rubric, visions. This is taken from the rubric about visions, different visions people have. Sometimes on a psychic level, you have a vision. And so here we're just having visions of fire. We see this in, I believe it's in Ezekiel, prophet Ezekiel, in Bible, the visions of fire and so forth. And of course, there's the burning bush. So there are visions of fire are something that's historical in human nature. And from this mirroring chain, this chain of mirroring rubrics, mirroring the circumstances, the impact, we had this possibles list throughout this rubric chain, all these redundancies, filtering, final, very small filtering rubric all the way at the end, narrowing it down to just these oils, as you can see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 oils. Remember where we began. We began up here. this mirroring rubric chain, we began with this many oils, 60 oils or so. And as you can see, after we've gone through the rubric chain, get past this, we go through the rubric chain, one link after another, smallest link at the end. We got that 50 oils or so down to 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 oils. So this is a workable list for me to go to the chapters. Imagine if I just took this one internal, let's say just internal heat. Fire, oh, internal heat, I'll take that. And you have 65 oils in here. Imagine how much time you would have to spend going through 65 chapters to see which ones fit. Well, that's why you use the repertorization process first to narrow it down to a workable number of oils. Then you go to the chapters in the Materia Medica Spiritualis of Essential Oils. You cannot use aromatherapy books to do this type, do spiritual phytoessencing work. You have to go much deeper into the soul nature of the oils, which my Materia Medica Spiritualis of Essential Oils is designed to do. Each of the chapters is 20 to 30 pages long for one oil. So that by the end of that chapter, the soul nature of that oil through this synthesis that I used of different systems to understand that oil on a deeper level, elaborate a clear portrait of who that oil is on its own soul level. Then you know if it fits the case, if it fits the soul level of the case of the individuals or the individual that you are blending for. In this case, the standouts, the ones that made the team, that after the review of the chapters made it into the blend. Cypress is highlighted in yellow because it's already in the blend from the previous rubric chains. It's on the previous standouts list, but we have now laurel, lemon, and mastic. Okay, so through the second rubric chain, I'm able to get 4 more oils. And I'm going at it from a different angle. First, I used that one angle using the creation cycle and the control cycle. Now in the second cycle, I'm using the invasion of these climatic factors into the individual. Grab some more oils. Now I moved into the relevant physical body rubric chain. The picture here symbolizing different parts of the anatomy of the person. So, being a naturopath, I'm thinking, well, what possibly is happening to them on this physical level as a result of this fire? So you don't want to say, well, I'm not going to bother with that. This is a spiritual phytoessencing. I should just focus on the emotionals. It's trauma. That's not true. Nothing is really separable, but mind, body, spirit's all one thing. The division between the three of them is artificial. They're all one organism. They're all part of the same thing. And when you look at the physical body, it has its emotional tie-ins. The liver is associated with many things on an emotional and spiritual level. On an emotional level, it's associated with anger and frustration of will, and depression and bitterness. There are various emotions associated with the liver. But look, physical issues are important. It's important to know those because they will have ramifications on all levels of being. So, of course, the liver is the organ of the body that filters toxins from the blood. It pulls toxins out of the blood. It combines those toxins with other different biochemicals in the body to create metabolites or various compounds that are less toxic and less dangerous to move through the body, and then excretes them, either vis-a-vis the kidneys or the intestines. It will excrete those toxins in a less toxic, dangerous form. So I chose the liver. Many people have done liver detoxes and so forth. They're recognizing the liver's ability to store toxins. And I chose autotoxemia. This means self-poisoning, that the blood, or self-poisoning of the blood by bad food, bad air, taking drugs, prescription drugs, using cosmetics and soaps and shampoos that are loaded with chemicals, drinking tap water that is unpurified, breathing air that's really bad. And that's what we're thinking about in this particular case. We're not thinking about each person's individual lifestyle habits. We're thinking about, hey, the air is loaded with these toxins from the wildfire, these harmful chemicals. And this is not only trees and grasses that are burning, it's houses with paint and sheetrock and insulation and car tires. And there's all kinds of things burning and putting out pollution into the air. And so the person is autotoxemic. They have a toxic load within the body that supersedes the body's ability to deal with it. It has to get rid of it somehow. And if it doesn't, it's going to store it. And somewhere down the road, those stored toxins can come back to really haunt you in the creation of some type of very difficult, complex, and dangerous chronic disorder. Now, of course, another area that's going to be really affected is going to be the lungs. They're breathing this stuff in. So the lungs are going to be really deeply impacted. So we go from liver, that's this rubric up here. We do a filtration. We can see the highlighted oils that were redundant between autotoxemia and liver. These are the oils that are redundant between lungs and autotoxemia and liver. And you can see how the filtration process is gradually beginning to narrow down the set of oils we're going to look at from this physiology level. Then I chose air, better for open air. In other words, for pure, open, free flowing air, not this smoky soup that people were. I didn't even mention all the planes going overhead, dropping chemical fire retardant all over the area. So, the person will be better for some fresh air to get out of the area somewhere and hopefully maybe go somewhere where there's some trees and the air is clean and they're not breathing this. So they're better for open air, better for open air. And now we've reduced it down to this, maybe 20 oils or so here. And finally, I chose Wei Qi. Qi, as we all know, is vital force. Qi flows through the meridians in Chinese medicine. It's the vital force that flows through the meridians or channels to various organs. For instance, the heart meridian carries the qi to the heart, and the lung meridian or lung channel carries, like a stream, carries the qi to the lungs. So the lung channel is different than the lungs, but it's associated with the lungs. So ultimately, they're horse and carriage. They belong together. Well, there is some qi that's not in the channels, that's just below the skin, like a layer of qi. And this is called the Wei Qi. And this is protective qi. It's to protect you from invasion of dryness and wind and heat and so forth. But also it protects you against psychic attack. It protects you against invasive microorganisms and so forth. But it can become depleted. You're becoming depleted by all the stress, trauma, and grief and loss and so forth. And your qi is becoming more diminished. So the Wei Qi becomes diminished as well. And you become more open, more susceptible. Your level of susceptibility is greatly increased. So I use the rubric Wei Qi. In this case, regarding the depletion of the Wei Qi. Not to put more Wei Qi into you, but mirroring the fact that your Wei Qi has been impacted. And this is the last rubric, and you can see it's the smallest. Look at the size of this rubric compared to this one, Wei Qi. And you can see it's been reduced to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 oils are left. See, this is about 70 oils in here, and we're down to 11. Okay, a little bit on the bigger side, but still manageable. But going through the chapters. Here's the possibles list of those 11 oils listed here. I went through the chapters here, came up with eucalyptus as my standouts. Eucalyptus, lime, peppermint, pine, and sage have now made the team of the City of Angels blend. Okay, so once again, what was this rubric chain? Going back up here, make you all dizzy by showing you this. And here it is. This rubric chain was the relevant physical body rubric chain. What's relevant? All these organs and anatomical parts that are in here, which ones are relevant? I'm going to choose a few. I can't choose all of them. You can make a really good case for the water element, the fluid, not the water element, the lymphatics, the interstitial or the extracellular fluids. The heart has been stressed, the blood circulation. You can make whatever case you want. I chose liver, autotoxemia, lungs, air, and weight sheath. So here's the cumulative standouts list. So from the 3 standouts list that I had thus far, that I discussed previously, you'll want to go back in this recording and review all of this so you can understand this. This is going to take more than one listening to really get. If you want to get it, you got to review things. I'm almost 75 and I'm still taking classes because I want to get better at things. So right in this era, it's great. You can take full-fledged, full-on classes online like I do. That's what I'm doing. I'm presenting. There are other teachers that do the same thing. And I review videos 2, 3, 4 times each, taking my notes, correlating things, getting my understanding, and getting my aha moments. So just a brief run through, maybe it'll help you in some way, but not as much as really studying. So the 3 lists combined, which is called a cumulative standouts list, gave us these oils, and these oils are all in the blend. These are all in the blend. This is the body or the main body of oils in the City of Angels Wildfire Trauma Relief Blend. But there's another way to choose oils, and I use that at the end. And that's to use my Synthesis Materia Medica Spiritualis of Essential Oils, the chapters. So saying to myself, there are some oils I had in mind that are not on this list because of the rubrics I chose. They're not foolproof. Some will slip through the cracks because I didn't have rubrics that would have made those jump out to me. That doesn't mean there aren't any other possible oils that can go into this blend. And knowing the oils as well as I do, having studied them for so many years, I said, well, there are some oils I really want to look at. And so this is called direct essential oil selections, which means they're not repertorizing. I'm just going to chapters that I want to look at those oils. See, maybe. So these are some of the ones I had in mind. Myrrh. Myrrh comes from this hot desert, really hot desert place. It's dry, it's hot. In some of the old texts, it's referred to as some type of a hell, actual hell. And I liked the idea that it was not only hot and dry, but hell. And myrrh is for deteriorating conditions, for ulcerations, for aging, for falling apart. It's really a remedy for that has some real trauma value, if you really understand it, especially in older folks. And a lot of older folks were affected. Santolina has a section in the chapter about the Ezekiel's chariot. And Ezekiel's chariot, from the chapter Ezekiel in the Bible, it appears out of fire. So I said, well, I want to look at that. So I looked at it, and it had lots of things that really made me think about it. And I looked at it, and sure, there it was. Santolina really made sense. Santolina means holy flax, and you'll have to read the chapter to know what what that means. And then galbanum. Galbanum, I remember that galbanum was for that the cell salt calisol in my Materia Medica is associated with the oil galbanum. And calisol is the oil in PhytoEssencing and my cell salt Materia Medica that's associated with the lungs and the lung meridian. And galbanum is also associated with the gemstone obsidian, which in turn is associated with grief. There's a type of obsidian, which I use as part of my obsidian gemstone essence, just called Apache tear. And it's called Apache tear because tribe was attacked. I cannot remember the tribe was attacked by soldiers or by another Indian tribe. And many of the warriors were killed, and the women were in deep grief. And for some reason, they named this particular formation of obsidian, which looks like they're sort of round nodules, as Apache tears, based on that particular incident. And lavender was just included because it's included in all SPE blends, because without going into great depth about this right now, you can check out previous recordings about why. But basically, it harmonizes. It's the only oil that will harmonize all the individual soul natures of each of the oils in the blend to make them into sort of a group that works together as a team. They interact, they engage with each other, and they interact together. They have their own soul natures, just like different people have soul natures. So you want to be able to organize all these disparate people or oils into one group that's willing to act together and work in concert and work harmoniously. And lavender is the harmonizing oil that helps facilitate that. The reason why it's complex, but it has to do with the Kabbalah's tree of life and lavender's how lavender relates to the vessels on the tree of life in a way that no other oil does. It relates to the precise midpoint of the tree of life, the vessel of Tiferet, which means beauty, but it also means heavenly gate of harmony. It's also referred to as the heavenly gate of harmony. And each of the vessels in the tree of life has its own vessels. Has its own tree of life with its vessels. So lavender is the only oil that's specific for Tiferet, beauty, heavenly gate of harmony, within Tiferet, beauty, heavenly gate of harmony, so it can harmonize all the oils in the blend. So the finalized standouts list completed. All the oils on the standouts list that you know, plus the ones I selected based upon direct selection. The myrrh. Let's see what we'll do that for that. Myrrh, the Santalina, the galbanum, and the lavender. This group of oils was selected via the Repertory rubric chains. This group was chosen via the direct method. I'm going direct, skipping repertorizing because the rubrics didn't highlight these oils, but I suspected they may have important relevance and serve a real important role in the blend. And I decided, knowing the oils and knowing something about them, I'm going to look them up. And there were probably some others as well that I looked up and rejected, but these survived that review in the Materia Medica Spiritualis. And lavender, as I said, is in all the Spiritualis of Essential Oil blends. Now, that completes part one of this discussion. Part two, which will be the next video recording that you can now click onto. The use of the SPE, Spiritualis of Essential Oils, Wildfire Trauma Relief Blend, Where are we going to use it? Well, I'll just show you real briefly. I'm not going to go into it. I'm going to talk about what dampness are. I'm going to tell you why I chose these points, where they are. They're really easy to find. You don't have to be a professional practitioner to know this or go to school for years to learn how to do this. You look at the pictures, you read the text, you'll be able to use them. It's just that simple. So when I come back to part two, you're going to learn, first of all, what dilution I use. I'm using a dilution of the blend, not the concentrated blend, but a dilution in carrier oil. And I'll also discuss the homeopathic dilution that was made from the blend, the 4X dilution, which is a 1 to 10,000 dilution that's used internally. So with that said, I'm going to end part one. I will end my share here. And I'm going to stop share. And here I am again. And so with that said, we now understand how the blend was formulated. I didn't go over the actual blending blueprint of how to do that. I will do that in part two. So you'll see what the blending blueprint looks like. And then I will discuss how do we use it? How's it done? How long is it used for? And so you'll have an understanding of how the practical application of the blend as well. So with that said, I will see you in part two. Hello, everyone. This is part two of the class number one of the Natural Health Science System Spiritualis of Essential membership. And I'm going to pick up where I left off. In part one, I discussed the formulation of the City of Angels Wildfire Trauma Relief Blend. Gave a lot of details in terms of how it was formulated, how the repertorization was done. Now, in part two, I'm going to go ahead and discuss, well, how do you use it? There will be a very brief part three, and that will only be perhaps a 10-minute video session. And in part three, I will actually show you the blueprint for the blend and go over how the blending is done. For now, we want to discuss, well, okay, we formulated the blend, we made the blend. What do we do with it? How do we use it? So let's take a look at that. And then in part three, we'll move on to the blend blueprint. So for those of you who actually want to blend it or keep it in your records to review and see how the drop counts are distributed throughout the layers and how a layered blending is done, you can have that in your records. So let's take a look and start our first share. So here we are. You see we're already up on page 18 of this particular document, which will be posted in the member zone. So you could download this document. So as I've noted before, Spiritualis and more tangibly, my natural health science system is a mixture of East and West. There's Western physiology and the conventional understanding of symptoms and diseases from the Western medical standpoint in Spiritualis and traditional naturopathic standpoint, Western naturopathic standpoint, viewpoint. But there's also a great deal of Chinese medicine in the natural health science system. I've worked with elements of the Eastern healing arts for about 50 years. And acupoint therapy has been an important part of what I've done for a long time. Even before I got into practice, I was training in acupoint therapy as part of my martial arts training. So one of the beauties of acupoint therapy is that it gives you access to the inner parts of the body vis-a-vis the skin. So the acupoints are basically points of access into channels or meridians which guide the vital force, referred to in Chinese medicine as the qi, to the various organs. So if you have the lung meridian, it's not the lung organ, but it is the pathway of energy that flows to the lungs. So they basically work as a team, the lung meridian and the lungs. Same for the heart meridian and the heart, and so on and so forth for the various meridians. And there are 12 regular meridians for various organs and organ systems. So you can treat these acupoints with needles. In acupuncture, that's how points are treated, to open up the flow, to restore the normal flow along those meridians. The idea being in Chinese medicine, one of the primary causes of disease is interruption or inhibition or some type of reckless action within these meridians in terms of the distribution of the qi to the vital organs. And so you help restore it by unblocking it or regulating it through the strategic use of needles in acupoints, which are just specific, like stations on a railway line, the railway line being the meridian. But there are other ways to interact and treat these acupoints, including moxa, which I've discussed quite a bit. Various different types of color lights. It's been demonstrated color lights, the wavelengths of color lights, various frequencies do travel along the same pathways as the qi. And so once you activate a point, vis-a-vis needles or moxa or magnets, or just simply acupressure massage, you can then go ahead and use the lights and send the lights or transmit those lights through the meridians. So in my own work, personal work, I do use needles, but I don't teach that because most of the people I work with are not acupuncturists. But I do treat or discuss how to use moxa, how to use the color lights, how to use acupressure, and how to use acupoint magnets in terms of activating these points. So one of the methods or acupuncture traditions that's part of my work and influences how I do point selections is the work of Master Dong, who was a great 20th century master of acupuncture. Lived in Taiwan. He died in 1975. A very interesting story that I will discuss at another time. And there are many interesting things about Master Dong and the points and the point protocols that he used and so forth. One of the most interesting is his use of what he referred to as the Dhamma. And I'm going to discuss that. First, how much of the blend do you rub into the points and how's it done? Well, we're using a 4% dilution for this blend. That doesn't mean every dilution you will do in Spiritualis is 4%. Some will be 3%, some will be 2%, some will be 5%. Normally, I'm in that zone, somewhere between 1% and 5% is in the SPE zone. So you may think to yourself, well, the 4% is probably the strongest. It's stronger in a material sense, but it's not necessarily the strongest because for some people, 1% will be more effective because there's lots of obstructions in this individual, and something that is less material will have a greater chance of working its way around the obstructions. And most people who are diseased or traumatized, there are inhibitions or obstructions or stasis in the fluids and in the movement of the qi. But here I selected a 4% dilution, which is essentially made by taking 4 drops of the blend in a 5 ml bottle and mixing it with 96 drops of carrier oil. Now, in Spiritualis PhytoEssencing, organic unrefined coconut oil or organic unrefined jojoba oil are the preferred carrier oils. Now, there are certain instances where I will use a different oil other than these two for very specific reasons. usually on the more physical side of the things, from the more naturopathic perspective. But for our purposes here at Spiritualis, doing deep soul level healing work in SPE, unrefined coconut or jojoba are the two carrier oils that are preferred. Now, this dilution is going to be applied to the acupoints, which you will now see. And these linear acupoint patterns that I'm going to show you on these specific acupoint meridians are referred to in Master Dong acupuncture, his system, as Dao. Now, let's take a look and see what Dao are, and then let's take a look at the Dao that I have selected. So if you're needling, the Dao involves putting needles in a line that is vertical or horizontal. Sometimes it's triangular, but most often it's vertical, horizontal, diagonal in a line. So the thing that I compare it to is telephone poles going down the road and connecting wires from one pole to the next pole to the next pole. And the Dao is basically the same thing. It's a synergistic setup to amplify the effect of one needle with others. It's transferring the energy from one to the next to the next. And by doing that, you're amplifying the wave. And it's remarkably effective to use Dao as part of your technique. Now, you can use Dao, and I use it, other than needling, I use it with moxa extensively. You could use the Ten Shin tool, which I've discussed extensively in the past. It's a spring-loaded probe-looking tool that you can activate acupoints with before you do color lights or before you do moxa, before you massage an oil blend into those points. Or you can do acupressure massage along Dao. And of course, color lights can be used along Dao. Now, again, this class is not about how to do all those things. So I'm just covering it really briefly. I will dedicate a class to that sometime in the near future. And then you'll have a recording to see how all of those things are done. So the Dao that I have incorporated into this protocol correlate with certain of the organ and 5-element focal points featured in the Repertory. And in order to recall that, you have to go back to part 1 of this recording, and you'll see what various rubrics that I selected and why, and it's all explained. I'm not going to go over that again. That would be redundant. We're focusing just on technique in this section, not a lot of content, more process than content. So the first Dao is kidney. Kidney is the yin organ of the water element. Remember, this is about the wildfire, and we're in the first rubric. We had fire element set up in an overlay with water element being the controlling element over fire element. So I'm choosing here 3 major kidney points for the Dao. I'm not going to go over these in any great detail, but I'll show them to you, and then you can read through them. You can Google them and get a better idea of where their locations are. They're all readily and easily found. You do not have to go to classes and schools in order to know how to do this. You can watch this video and know how to do this. So kidney 2 is located right here. There's a bone on the inside of your foot, just above the arch of the foot, which protrudes. You can see it's on a diagonal down from the ankle bone right over here. You'll find it's the only one that protrudes. You can't miss it. It's called the navicular bone. It's one of the ankle bones. The bone is made up of the ankle, I should say, is made up of a series of bones. And the navicular bone is one of the tarsal bones or ankle bones, and it's located just below this point. Kidney 2 is located just below in the arch, the navicular bone. Now, does that mean it's exactly here or it's exactly there? Not really. The whole idea is to push around, probe around with your fingertip until you find a point that if you're working on yourself, you go, oh yeah, that's it. That's sensitive right there. So it doesn't have to be right here. It could be a little bit farther down. It could be a little bit this way or that way. And everybody, it's going to be a little bit different. There is no exact, precise point. Those are just orientation, more or less. Sometimes it is the exact bullseye, but a lot of times it's off a little bit this way or that way. So the idea is to find the sensitive spot in the area, which is called the ashi point, rather than, well, I have to do it because it's right here according to the book. So this is the first point, is kidney 2. The second one is kidney 3, which is right over here. This one right here, the top one. You'll have this document, you'll see it, which is between the ankle bone and the Achilles tendon, right in this groove between the ankle bone, which is called the medial malleolus, technically, and the Achilles tendon, which is this hard tendon back here at the back of the lower leg. And right in the middle, you push around your finger till you find a tender spot, and that's kidney 3. And 2 inches above kidney 3, 2 inches above kidney 3, is kidney 7, right to the inside of the Achilles tendon. So here's the Achilles tendon right here. Kidney 7's right on the inside borderline of that Achilles tendon, in line with kidney 3, 2 inches above it. So I'm going to stop my share here for a second, and I'm going to come back to me. I'm just going to say, how do you measure 2 inches? The width across your thumb knuckle is approximately 1 inch. So this is your ruler for measuring 2 inches. There's 2 inches. If you want to use 2 thumb knuckles at once, if you want to use one at a time, you go 1 inch, 2 inches, and there it is. And you can mark these points out. I mark the points out when I'm doing moxa. I'll mark the points out with a little chemical-free eyeliner pencil, because they rub right off. And there's chemical-free. You can buy them online, and you just make a little mark. You measure around and you poke around in the area where it's supposed to be. You find the sensitive spot for the ashi point, and you make a little mark. 1 inch, 2 inches, 2 fingers is 1.5 inches. 2 fingers, 1.5 inches. 4 fingers, 3 inches. 4 fingers, 3 inches across the knuckles. 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches. So when you're measuring, you're using your hand. You're not using a ruler, a tape measure. This is not carpentry. And once you find the mark for moxa, acupressure, magnets, make a little mark with your eyebrow pencil. Make sure it's organic or at least chemical free. So let's go back. So this is the first of the Dalma, and let's go ahead and move on to the next one. So what are you doing here, by the way? How are you rubbing this in? So basically, you've marked out all your points. You can stimulate the points with just do thumb circles, press in and do thumb circles for acupressure. You can use the Tsen Shin tool, which is in previous videos that I've done that demonstrated Tsen Shin tool. I have something that looks like a Tsen Shin tool here. I'll show that to you. Let's go back to that again so you get a better idea of this. This is a Tsen Shin tool. And basically, let's say I'm working on a point here, which we're not, but just for our purposes, we're working on a point here. And it's got a spring in it, and you're just springing, and you're just pushing in, and the spring gives you this sort of recoil, and it presses the point in a little bit more effectively, and you work the point. You can work it from different angles. You can do vertical, is the most common way, is vertically, but every once in a while, if it's something where you're trying to affect bone, you will angle towards the bone. If you're trying to affect muscle, you'll angle more deeply into the muscle. If you're trying to affect tendons or connective tissues, then you'll get closer to the bone where the muscle attaches into the bone, where there's a tendon. That's how muscles attach to bones. So this is what a tension tool looks like. So when I mention it, that's what I mean. Okay, let's go back there. So I use my tension tool, or I use my thumb and did thumb circles, or I use my tension tool and I work kidney 2, kidney 3, kidney 7, or I did moxa on these points using indirect moxa, using a smokeless moxa stick. Again, that's something I demonstrated in previous classes. I've done all of those. Once you've done all of those, then you can then do a massage along the dhamma. You connect the dhamma with a massage, just massage. Now, in this case, you're massaging upwards from kidney 2 to kidney 3 to kidney 7. Stop, bring your thumb back around. Don't go back down this way. Just follow the pathway of the meridian, kidney 2, kidney 3, kidney 7. And you do it until you feel like you really work the area really well. Then you will take the blend and you can rub the blend first, the diluted blend, into the individual points with thumb circles. Rub the blend in with thumb circles, and then rub the entire dhamma. Work the entire dhamma with the blend. Do this on both feet. Okay, let's move on. So here's kidney 3. You can see it behind the ankle. And here's kidney 7, which is 2 inches above kidney 3. Here's kidney 7, here's kidney 3, right along the front side, the anterior side of the Achilles tendon, which you can see right here. So here's the ankle bone. Here's the Achilles tendon. Here's kidney 3 between the ankle bone and kidney and the Achilles tendon. 2 inches above that, remember your thumb across the width across the thumb knuckle is 1 inch. So you measure 1 and then 1 again, 2 thumb widths. You'll find kidney 7. You press around until you find an area that feels tender, and that's the place you'll use as your point. Now, the second dhamma is a very simple one. It's on the top of the foot between the bone that connects into the large toe, which is called the first metatarsal bone. And then the bone that connects into the second toe, which is called the second metatarsal bone. You can see here, these bones ultimately come together, and there's sort of a V or vertex where they come together. The angle in here, and you try to get as close to this angle as you can, and that's liver 3, one of the big blood moving points in the body. And this is liver 2. Now, liver 2, just on the other side, there's like a web. Here's the, this side of the web of skin between the 2 toes. And it goes on a while, as you can feel it. It feels more like a web than something solid when you press down into it. And right on the other side, this mark is not that accurate. Right on the other side of the web, let's say it's right here, is where liver 2 would be. Another way to mark it is that you're on the other side of this joint. So here's the joint. This is called the metatarsal phalangeal joint. These bones are called phalangeal bones. And these are metatarsal bones. So this is the metatarsal phalangeal joint right down here. And you can find liver 2 sometimes right on the other side of that joint, right in here. So it could be right on the other side of the web. That's called proximal, closer to the body than this part of the web. Or you can go a little bit more proximal to this side of the joint. So, well, the joint actually is right around here. So it would, it's basically right on either side. Not either side, between the joint of the 2 toes of the second metatarsal and the first metatarsal. And it's essentially just beyond the web. This one is you try to get it as close as you can to the angle of these 2 bones where the vertex is. The separation between the 2 points is approximately 1.5 to 2 inch Chinese inches, which are referred to as sun, 1.5 to 2 sun Chinese inches. It never really works out exactly that way. Just sort of press around and find the tender spots. Find the ashi points, the tender spots that are located somewhere near in the vicinity of these classical points or classical locations. And again, once again, we're going to go ahead and use our Tenshin tool. We'll work these 2 points, work them well. Maybe you'll do moxa. That's what you'd like to do. Then you'll begin, or you can do just a thumb pressure on the 2 points and relieve them until they relieve. Then you massage in your blend, in this case, the City of Angels blend, into this point, liver 2 and liver 3, and then do the Dhamma. From here, rub straight up to there. Take your finger away. Rub from here straight up here. You don't rub backwards because the direction in the meridian is this way. This is 2, this is 3, liver 4 would be up here. So this is the direction of the energy flow in the meridian is from the lower numbers to the higher numbers. So in this particular case, you're starting here and massaging in this way. That's the second Dhamma. The third Dhamma is the lungs. We discussed this extensively, or I discussed this extensively in part 1. Clearly, when there's a wildfire, the lungs are going to be greatly affected. The lungs, dryness from the heat affects the lungs primarily. Wei qi, the protective layer of qi that's just under the skin, is directly related to the lungs as well, as is the skin. The skin is actually a respiratory organ as well. It breathes, it takes in oxygen and removes carbon dioxide, excretes carbon dioxide. And so I chose one of Master Dong's lung dhammas, and here they are, 3 points. Well, actually, it's 4 points, as you can see. These numbers, don't worry about these numbers. It's part of the nomenclature of Jung, of Master Dong acupuncture. All you have to know is where the points are. So this is your wrist crease right here, the wrist crease on the palmar side of the arm, the inside soft side of the forearm. And you'll have a bone that runs along the side of the arm called the radial bone. And you'll feel that as you press along. Oh, that's bone, that's bone. But you come a little bit to the inside. You go from here just a wee bit, and you're not going to be on bone anymore. And it's going to feel like sort of a channel before you get to a thicker muscle. It'll feel like you go from the bone and you drop into sort of a soft channel. The points are in that soft channel. That's where the lung meridian is, in that soft channel. And here you can see the measurements. This one is 4 sun, or sun, from, or I should say this point is 4 sun from the wrist, which means approximately 4 inches. And again, how would you do that? Well, let's stop the share for a second. 3 sun, put the thumb next to it, 4 sun. So you would measure 3 onto one arm, and then you make a little mark if you're doing it on yourself, and then you put your thumb on over that mark. So let's say you made a mark. How am I going to show this? Well, anyway, it's on the other side of my arm. Let's say you made a mark over here after you measure with your fingers, your 4 fingers. That's 3 inches. Now just put your thumb up against that mark, and that gives you the extra inch, and that's your 4th. Make your mark there for 4 inches. The next one above that is 3 inches above it. So once you know where one is, you can measure from the next to the next, and you know how to do it. So the first, yes. So the first of the marks from the wrist is 4 Chinese inches up. Make your mark. 3 inches above this mark, 3 sun meets 3 Chinese inches above this mark is right here. Then 3 inches above that mark is right here. And then right in the elbow crease to the radial side, the thumb side of the big tendon called the biceps tendon that goes into the elbow crease. You bend your elbow a little bit, you'll feel that tendon in the elbow crease to the thumb, just immediately to the thumb side of it, called the radial side, is the fourth point in this Dama. This is also lung 5 in conventional acupuncture. This is lung 5, but this is the Dama, 4 points. So once again, you use your Tenshin tool or your thumb, and you activate the point. You could use Moxa to activate these points, activate them, get them all activated. Then go ahead and rub the City of Angels blend, or the blend we're using in this particular case, into this point. Then the next one, rub it in circles. Then the third one in circles. Then the fourth one in circles. And then in this particular case, the energy of the lungs moves downward this way. So you will want to do your rubbing from this side down. You want to go ahead and massage from the top down after you've done each point individually. And it doesn't matter that you started here because you're not doing a directional movement. You're staying in one spot. You can start here, then move up to this one, then move up to that one, then move up to that one for the circular rub. And then you're going to go ahead and massage down this way. Start from the top, massage down this way, because that's how the energy, the lung meridian begins up on the chest by the shoulder, and it ends down on the thumb. And so you're going to go ahead and massage in this direction from the elbow downward towards the hand. Finally, this is one of the great Dalmans in the Master Dong system, which is called the 4 flowers. It's basically a stomach meridian, so it's for earth. And as we saw in the Repertorizing, we use earth is the child of mother, and we use earth to draw energy away from its mother in the same way that a baby who is nursing draws energy and vital reserves away from the mother, and the mother can become quite fatigued by breastfeeding if she's not eating properly or food is not that available and she's sacrificing herself. She'll become quite depleted because the child is drawing reserves from her. So in the same way, if we use earth points, we can draw energy away from fire. That's all explained in part 1. And you can see the points here of the 4 flowers. And you can see this is the tibia, this is the fibula, and it's in the space between the two here. Now you got to ask yourself, well, how do I find them? Well, you find them from the top down. The top point, which is called 4 flowers upper, is equivalent or level with stomach 36. Here's the bottom of the kneecap. Here's the 4 fingers. That's 3 inches. Right alongside the tibia is stomach 36. The 4 flowers is somewhat more inward, whereas stomach 36 is away from the bone. 4 flowers upper is right up next to the bone. And again, you're looking for something sensitive, something painful. That is deshi. You're able to elicit this pain response or this sensation response in that particular point called dechi. And so you want to make sure you find the right point by moving around a little bit here, a little over there, a little bit back this way until you find the spot. But get as close to the bone, as close to the tibia as you can. Okay. Now, 7709. This is 7708, the one I just showed you. 7709 is 4.5 inches below that. And again, I showed you how to measure that. Let's go back to that. How would I do 4.5? You got 4, and then you go ahead and you use 2 more fingers after you did 4, 1.5. Well, that's not 4.5, is it? So 4.5, you're going to do this. This is 3, sorry. 3, 4 fingers, but 3 inches, and then 2, 4.5. Now the rest of them are 2.5 below this one. So you would go 1.5, 2.5. You're using your fingers to find the points. So the point below this point is 4.5 Chinese inches down, approximately 4.5 inches down. Again, you go down as close to the bone as you can, and you look around and you feel around for a point, a little bit this way, a little bit that way, a little bit this way, a little bit that way, until you find one that's painful. Make your mark. Then 2.5 inches below that is the next point. Then 2.5 inches below that is the next point. And this one, as you can see, is, well, this one is running down with the cheek. So this is the spot that you would begin your, after you massage each, and do your stimulation, and then you do your circular massage on each point. And then you're going to rub in the oil in each point in a circular way individually. Then you do the dama. And you'll do the dama. In this case, you'll be going from the knee downward towards the foot, just stroking like an effleurage stroke and massage. You're just stroking downward along the course of the meridian, the dama. The energy of the stomach meridian flows downward from the top down. It's actually, the stomach meridian actually begins all the way up by the eye and travels its way downward all the way down to the toe. And so you're going downward. Now let's move on. You've rubbed that in and you're using that as your technique. You're doing that perhaps in the beginning. You'll be doing that maybe once a day for the first 3 or 4 days, maybe 5 days, 6 days, and then you have the practitioner or the individual has to determine that themselves. It's different in every case. And then you start doing every other day. Eventually, that seems to be, well, don't need that anymore. A couple of weeks pass. Then you can go ahead and go to once or twice a week, and then once a week, and then once every 2 weeks, and then you're done. Okay, this is an acute remedy. It's not something meant for long-term use. Perhaps use it for a month or 2 months, and then you're done with it, and you have to be graduated to another blend, to a follow-up blend from there, like a balanced momentum type of blend. To keep the momentum of the case going and move it in the direction of healing. And then we're using, in addition to the 4% dilution oil blend dilution, we're making a potentized dilution in alcohol. And to learn more about this, you may be able to find some recordings in the member zone. I do not know what's up there. I'm not in charge and actually have nothing really to do with the member zone. So I don't know what's up there, what's not, but it could very well tell you how to make potentized dilutions there. If not, that means it's a booklet that I will have to post up there for sale so that people can learn how to make potentized dilution. But it's a homeopathic technique of taking a substance and sequentially diluting it and energizing in a very specific way, which, once you do the dilution, the sequential dilution, you do what's called succussion, where you're banging the bottle of the diluted blend up against the spine of a book until you're separating the energy of the oil from the substance of it, and it disperses into the alcohol water solutions that you're using. This is and the purpose of this today is not to give you details of how that's done. You'll have to read about that on your own. It's not hard. I've been teaching it for many years now, how to do it. And it gives you an internal medicine from the blend because you're diluting it down great. So a 4x dilution means a 1 to 10,000 dilution. So it's 1 part, approximately, not precisely, but approximately 1 part of the blend to 10,000 parts of alcohol water solution. So it's very dilute. in 10 drops of it, you will have just a fraction of a drop of the actual blend. Remember, you're diluting the blend, 1 part blend to 10,000 parts alcohol water solution. And real quickly before we end, I'll say this much about potentized dilutions and potentization and so forth in spiritual phytoessencing. So via the process of potentization, which is one of the unique aspects of spiritual phytoessencing work with essential oils, because I am a classical homeopath among other things. So I've used and made homeopathic remedies for many years. And so when I created spiritual phytoessencing, I made these homeopathic style dilutions, which are called potencies in spiritual phytoessencing. As part of spiritual phytoessencing practice, you use the blend on the physical level and you use the potency internally on a deeper psychospiritual level. Not that the blend doesn't work on that level, it does, but because it's more substance, it's going to be more physical. Because this is less substance, it's going to be more the intangible, deeper aspects of the self structure and of the soul itself. So via the process of potentization, one removes the physical substance of the essential oils that comprise a spiritual phytoessencing blend and retains their plant soul essences. So the soul essences of the oil are retained, but the substance is removed. The physical aspect of any ensouled being, be it plant or animal, in the use of Kabbalistic metaphor, the Kabbalists would refer to that as the garments of the soul, what covers the soul and encloses the soul. And so SPE potentization involves the removing of the garments of a combination of essential oils. Another Kabbalistic metaphor is light and vessel. The soul is the light within the oil is its soul, and the physical organism, the substrate of the soul, is the vessel. So your physical body is your vessel, your soul is your light and vessel. SPE potentization removes the vessel and reveals the inner light. We're removing the vessel and exposing the inner light. And so you're doing this in a very organized, time-proven way to remove layer after layer of the blend and expose more and more of the inner light, the light, as you remove the vessel that harbors it, you will have greater access to the soul within. So the soul is a direct distillate of divine light. By isolating the light that constitutes plant souls, in spiritual phytoessencing, the essential oils are considered to be one of the most concentrated carriers of the soul of the plant, in the same way that human blood is one of the most concentrated carriers of the human soul. So the essential oil is one of the most concentrated carriers of the plant soul. Now, every aspect, every cell of that plant is ensouled, just like every cell of the human body should be ensouled. But some parts of a plant are more concentrated carriers or more deeply populated by the plant soul essence. Because it is not bound by crude matter after potentization, this light will have a natural affinity for the infinite precincts of the higher soul. So as when you take it, because it's not encumbered by the crude matter, of the blend, the physical substance, it will have a natural affinity, like a guiding aspect of the oil, for the parts of the soul that are of the human soul that are unbound by substance or unrestricted by substance, and that's the higher soul. The higher soul is that aspect of your soul that has never lost contact with its divine source. So it's the least substantial, in a substance sense of the word, of all the aspects of the soul. The Greek philosopher Democritus, ancient Greek philosopher, taught that nothing exists but atoms and the void. And what he means by the void is not absolute emptiness, but rather the uncreated potential of all things that preceded creation. So your soul is basically the harbor where rests all your uncreated potential that precedes whatever creation your soul emanates in this life. And so you are trying to, with your potentized dilution, to access and engage with the uncreated potential within the soul, which will thereby then be able to guide and activate and guide creation. So you can be a creative soul on this level rather than somebody who's in a state of stasis or stagnation. Lao Tzu, the ancient Taoist philosopher, wrote, "Before heaven and earth, there was nothing nebulous. There was something nebulous, silent, isolated, unchanging and alone, eternal. The mother of all things, I do not know its name. I call it Tao." The Tao can be described as the unknowable unity of the divine that directs the unfolding of every aspect of the universe. The Tao is the wisdom of the divine made manifest in nature and individual existence. Lao Tzu taught regarding the wu or empty center is the empty space that makes the cup useful. It is only the hole at the center that allows the wheel to spin. It is only the doors and windows the empty spaces in the wall that makes the room a place to live. The goal of SPE potentization is to remove the outer layers of an essential blend and reveal its wu, its empty center, its void, the place of the uncreated potential of all things that precede creation. Therefore, whereas the customized essential oil blend itself works deeply into the feeling aspect of consciousness and the interface between feeling and thinking or intellect, the potentized dilution works more deeply into the interface between one's real self, that aspect of your self structure, which is most closely associated with your true nature, your soul nature, and one's eternal nature or I. The I is that aspect of your soul that travels from one incarnation to the next in your chain of being of birth, death, and rebirth. It is the you that you have always been since your soul emanated through all its incarnations as different human beings, as different people over thousands and thousands of years. That I has remained exactly the same. It's your unique drop of divine light, your eternal I, who you are. So the potentized dilution works more deeply into the interface between one's real self, that aspect of the self structure, which emanates directly from your eternal I, before it becomes corrupted by the influences of society and social conditioning, what your parents tell you you need to be, and what schools and indoctrinate you into, what religious indoctrination and so forth, all of which tell you you need to be this rather than that, you should be this, you should alter that, you should modify this, and that becomes your ideal self. You are operating from a platform of what other people consider to be ideal, but is not really you. What is really you is your real self, that aspect of self-structure that first emanates from your eternal I. And the potentized dilution works more deeply into the real self, whereas the blend itself is working on more of the outer precincts of the self structure, where they interface with the real self. The potentized dilution works with the real self, where it interfaces with the eternal I. Thus, the potentized dilution greatly increases the potential for initiating profound realizations through unitive consciousness. That's a great term, unitive consciousness. It means mystical union with spirit, wherein there is no separation between the knower and the known. The knower and the known, no separation, one and the same. These spiritual realizations need to be converted into reorientation and reordering of priorities within one's daily life, a process encouraged and maintained by one's interaction with the physical oil blend. So every time you use the oil blend, you hold on to those realizations you have via the auspices of the potentized dilution. You use the blend to cement your gains from the deep acting homeopathic aspect of the blend combination that you're using, the physical blend and the dilution. Thus, the blend and potentized dilution are fully interdependent. The potentized dilution opens up deep doorways within the soul. The physical oil blend sort of paves the way or removes some of the obstructions along those pathways towards that deeper soul, and then cements or those gains and also transmits some of what has been gained on that deepest of soul levels to the more peripheral, outer, in a centrifugal way, to the more outer aspects of soul existence that engage with thought consciousness, rational consciousness, and your survival self, your survival personality. And so they both interact, they're interdependent. And we're going to leave it at that for part 2 of this video. And in part 3, which will be quite brief, perhaps 10 minutes, I will be just going over the blueprint for how to prepare the blend. So with that said, I'll see you again for part 3. I as well say, I'll see you again for part 3 here where you can see me. So hopefully you're getting the rhythm of all of this by now. And once again, I'll reiterate, you should listen to this type of instruction more than once. You really want to retain it. You have to review your material a couple of times at least. And then it starts to sink in. It becomes part of your consciousness, part of your understanding. So when you sit down to blend, when you're using the oils, when you're massaging the acupoints, when you're doing the Dhamma, when you're doing the various techniques that you're doing, you know what you're doing. You have a grounding in them, and they're not difficult. It's new, it's different. So you got to listen to it a couple of times to really get it. So with that said, I'm going to say we'll see you for part 3. Take care. Welcome back. This is part 3 of my discussion of the City of Angels, Wildfire, Trauma Relief Blend. And so let's just briefly see what we did in parts 1 and part 2. Take just a couple of minutes for that. Add in just a little bit. And then we're going to do part 3, which is going to be the blueprint. So we see what the blend and the blending actually looks like. So this will be the briefest part of the 3 parts. So let's take a look first. And let's go to share here. So in part 1, basically we went over the construction of the blend, how the blend was formulated. We went through the five elements. That was part of how rubrics from the repertory was selected, the creation or generating cycle, the Sheng cycle in Chinese medicine, the controlling or key cycle. We went through all of this and how this was influenced my rubric selections, and you can see the rubrics here. We see the various possible lists of oils. First, we started off with these 5 element overlays, as you can see here. Then we saw the split stream rubric chains. Difference between an overlay and a chain. An overlay is just 2 rubrics lined up and examined to determine redundancies in those 2 rubrics regarding essential oils. A rubric chain contains more than 2. That's a chain. Each of the rubrics being a link in the chain, creating more possibles lists. Then from there, moved on to the mirroring rubric chain. in terms of, well, we're going to try to mirror some of the effects of being exposed to the wildfire, including internal dryness, internal heat. These are patterns that are discussed in Chinese medicine or used as the basis for treatment, determining what the pattern is that's inside that human being. Chinese medicine, there are invading or invasive, what they refer to as pernicious influences. And those include heat and cold and dampness and dryness and wind, summer heat. And those can invade into the body. So rubrics were selected based upon that particular model. And again, possibles lists were created and standouts lists were derived from that. Standouts list being the list of the oils that have made it into the blend. Then finally, the relevant physical body rubric chain, which was straightforward Western physiology, pathology, naturopathic medicine, in terms of how or what parts of the body were being affected by the wildfire, including the liver, toxicity, the level of toxic load, the lungs, clearly, and the Wei Qi, which is the protective or defensive Qi, a layer of which is found just below the skin. Then I discussed direct essential oil selections. In other words, essential oil selections that were not derived from repertorizing, but via direct examination of chapters in my Materia Medica Spiritualis of Essential Oils. Finally, we came to the final standouts list, meaning the list of the oils that made it into the blend. In part 2, I discussed, well, how are we going to use this blend? How do we apply the blend? Remember, it's a 4% dilution. It's not the 100% undiluted concentrated blend that each person is getting, because this blend is being distributed to hundreds of people. So only the blender who is making the dilutions has the actual concentrated blend. Now, when you're working with an individual, just one person, they get the concentrated undiluted blend and they tap a few drops onto their wrists and inhale directly from the wrists the concentrated blend. You can use the concentrated blend, and whatever dilutions, 3%, 4%, etc., they would use, they make that dilution themselves. They take something from their concentrated undiluted blend, mix it in carrier oil, and they apply it here, apply it there as instructed. In this particular case, since the intention is to work with hundreds of people who have been affected by the wildfires, traumatized by them, then they're not tapping in onto the risk because they're getting a 4% dilution blend. Of course, there will be scent, but the scent will be perceived via the application of the diluted blend to the skin in various places. Now, acupoint therapy is a very important part of both the natural health science system and spiritual phytoessencing. So we're using these applications to specific acupoints. And in addition to that, we're using some of the synergistic point combinations that were developed by Master Dung, one of the great 20th century masters of acupuncture, that is derived from a 2,000-year family history of acupuncture, a familial style of acupuncture passed down from generation to generation over the course of 2,000 years. Master Dung being the last of those practitioners. He died in 1975, and he introduced the concept of the Dhamma, which are vertical, horizontal, or diagonal lined up. Well, you use needles, of course, being an acupuncturist. If you're not an acupuncturist, if you don't do acupuncture, you can just use these vertical or horizontal diagonal line alignments of points and treat them with acupressure, with your thumbs or your fingers, with a Ten Shin tool, which I have demonstrated before in previous videos and even in this video. I believe it was in part 2 of this video. Moxa and color lights, magnets. There are various ways to treat acu points. You don't have to use needles. There are other ways to do it. Of course, in some cases, needles is the best way. Would be the top priority if you're capable of using needles or if you know how to do that form of therapy. If not, we have these other options. And I discuss which damas we'll be applying the blend to. So the first dama is the kidney meridian or kidney channel dama that we'll be using here. And that included kidney 2, kidney 3, kidney 7. This is sort of a curve, but it's on a line within the meridian itself. Kidney 2, kidney 3, kidney 7, and I discussed, well, why kidneys? That's been discussed in the previous segments of this recording. And this is just showing where these points actually are. And so you have all this guidance within this recording as well as in this particular document, which will be posted in the member zone to reference, well, where are these points? And it's on the insided leg, obviously. The second Dalma was the liver Dalma. And this one is, you can see between the first and second metatarsal bones of the foot. And I discussed exactly how to locate those. And I also discussed, well, why the liver? The third Dalma was the lung Dalma for obvious reasons with all the smoke and so forth. And I discussed, here you can see the 4 points of the Dalma. And I discussed how to find those and how to treat those. And once again, you treat the individual points in these Dalmas, but you also then treat the entire alignment of points, the entire Dalma in one stroke with the blend. You stroke the blend on, and basically what I do when I do it, I'll massage into one point and then stroke to the next point and massage in a circle, stroke to the next point, massage in a circle, stroke to the next point, massage in a circle, then come away again and start at the top. Now, each of the meridians has a directional flow of chi. This is the lung meridian, and in the lung meridian, the flow of chi is from the chest down the arm to the hand. And so basically, you're going in that direction. You're going, well, this first point up here is in the elbow crease. You're going from the elbow crease downward this way. You're not going this way. You're not going counter to the meridian chi flow. You're going in line with it. So if we look at the liver, go up here a little bit. This is liver 2 and this is liver 3. So the meridian flow starts down on the toe and it moves upward this way. So you're massaging this way. Massage in, stroke, massage, come back. Massage in a circle, stroke, massage in a circle, come back. Now I do the same thing if I'm doing, often I'm using color lights with my color light tool, then I will treat one point with color light. If I'm using the same color, sometimes I'm using different colors on the same Dalma, but in this particular case, I'm going to be using the same color. So I'm using the same color here. I would first apply the color to this point. Then I would just scoot a line of color, just trail the tool, the crystal tip with the light up to the next point, and then go ahead and treat this area, hold it on that point. And then come back, treat the point again if necessary. Most of the time you don't have to. With color application, once is enough. But if you're going to do twice, do this again and then scoot up along the skin surface and then treat that point. And then if we go up here, the kidney meridian flow is from the foot. It starts on the bottom of the foot, kidney 1, moves upward along the leg. It goes up along over the abdomen, up the chest, and so forth. And so you would start here, massage, go along the line to the next one, massage, go along on a line to this one, just effleurage the gliding stroke with a couple of fingers. You don't need your whole hand to do this. A couple of fingers or even just the thumb, and massage it up to the next point and massage in here. Now, if you're using the same color light along this entire route, which I believe in this particular case, I don't remember what I determined for this, but I believe that I did 3 different color lights here, but it could be that you can use all the same color light for the entire kidney meridian. Then you train the color light here. When that feels like it's had a sufficient amount of light, you just trail your light tool along the skin to the next point. Hold it at that point, then trail till you get to the next point. So the direction of chi flow on the kidney meridian is from the foot upwards. And then finally, we have the final dhamma for flowers, stomach. And as you can see, here they are. Here are the points, lateral to the outside of the tibia. First one is right up against the bone. The other ones are a little bit farther away from the bone as you go. I gave directions as to how to find these, how to measure for them, and so forth. The direction of flow on this meridian is going to be from the top downward. Kidney meridian begins basically by the eye, or inside, actually inside the lower lid, and moves downward along the face, along the throat, and downward along the torso here to the leg, and terminates on one of the toes. And so what you're doing is you're going downward with your stroking in this direction. After discussing how to apply the blend, how to measure and so forth, I discussed, I should say, the 4x potentized dilution of how that from the original concentrated, not the 4x, not the 4% blend, but from the original concentrated undiluted oil blend. Before you make the dilution, you prepare a 4x potentized dilution, which is a 1 to 10,000 dilution, which is used internally. It's diluted in a mixture of alcohol and water, and there's a very specific way that that's done. I believe that whole methodology is posted in the member zone. If not, then I'm going to be putting together a booklet here in the near future that combines various techniques of spiritual vitalistic, including how to make potentized dilutions, and that will be available for purchase in the member zone in the near future. So the question is, with the potentized dilution, how much? How often? Basically, the general dose is 10%, 10 drops, I should say. 10 drops, it's taken sublingually, it's held in the mouth for 30 seconds or so and swallowed. The dosage schedule depends upon the person and the situation. It's not the same for everyone. It's not a standardized way of dosing. It's for each person that I've worked with, I've came up with a different idea of how much you would use to dose. I should say how often you should be dosing, the frequency of dosage. But theoretically, for the use of this City of Angels Wildfire Trauma Relief Blend, I would say something like this. I'm not saying this is what should be done, but this is perhaps would work, and then it's up to each practitioner to make her or his decision in terms of, well, that sounds like too much, or I should do more, it's not enough, or whatever. But based upon my experience with these potencies, I would say for the first week or so, I would do the potency once a day, perhaps for the first day, twice in the first day, then decreasing to once per day after that, perhaps for a week or so. Then maybe for another week, I would go to once every other day. Then perhaps for 2 weeks after that, twice a week. Then perhaps another 2 weeks at once per week. Then another 2 weeks at once every other week. Then I would discontinue at this point. Remember, this is an acute type of blend. It's not meant for long-term constitutional use, like a individual custom blend that I make for individuals, for one specific person, is meant for use for 4 months, 6 months, a year, if it's a very deep acting, high potency blend, constitutional blend. But in cases like this, the blend is really designed for acute use. So you're using it for perhaps a month, maybe a little bit longer, maybe 6 weeks, and then it's time to follow. You then follow with another blend. You then don't just drop off the cliff at that point and say, well, that's it, we're done, the case is over. Well, you don't know if the case is over. You have to see and follow the people you're working with and see, it's, have I accomplished what I needed to accomplish and now I can move on? Or does this person still need some attention and still requires something, but this is not covering the case like it did initially? I need to create a new blend, a new dilution, and take it to the next step. It's sequential. So now let's move on to today's topic. So in Spiritualis of Essential Oils, all blends are made in layers. So why are they made in layers? Why don't you just make the blend, be done with it? Well, because you get much more infiltration of dynamics into a blend if you build one layer, come back and see what it needs that more of in this second layer, then come back the day later and see what again. And what you're doing is you're weaving this complex fabric into the blend, which has a much greater dynamic than just, one coat of paint. Instead, you're painting this entire portrait one layer at a time. And that's many of the great portrait artists that you see in the museums and so forth. That's the way many paintings, not just portraits, but paintings in general, were done that way. They lay down one layer and then they come with different colors and lay it on top in different hues and develop the dynamic of their painting. And these are portraits in oil. So that's how this is done. You're creating. The Kabbalah teaches that the human soul is layered, that there are 5 layers to the human soul, starting with the lowest pole of the human soul, which is the one associated with everyday life and thought, consciousness, and rational thought, and so forth. And you're navigating through your daily life there in the material world. That's the lowest pole of the soul, called nefesh. And it goes through progressively higher and higher layers of the soul until you reach the most transcendent layers of the soul, which are called the outer lights, which you have no contact with on conscious, straightforward thought consciousness level. It's on this only something that in this transcendent aspect of your own soul that you're in contact with. So in the same way, the blend can start at this more substance level, and through your blending, you're getting deeper and deeper into the soul nature of the blend and the soul nature of the individual, vis-a-vis the complexity of the blend and the way it's layered to accommodate higher and higher energies within that blend. So when you look at these blend formula, you will see it is built in layers. The first layer containing all the oils is called the forest layer. All the other layers are referred to as mists, that are mists moving through the forest. And so you will see that. And so one of the things you need to learn if you're going to study Spiritualis of Essential in a concentrated way is, well, how do I figure out which oils go in each layer? There is a method for that, of determining how that's done, a very specific and precise method how it's done. It's not random. So I believe there are instructions for that in the members zone. I may be incorrect about that. I'm not really up onto what's there and what's not there. But that will be part of this manual that I'm putting together that will give you instructions along those lines, as well as with recordings, recorded lectures that tells you how to do it. Then the other thing you need to know is, well, okay, now I know which oils are in each layer, but what are the drop counts? How do I figure out how many drops of each oil are used in each of those layers? That's another technique that is a very, very precise technique that's used to determine the drop counts. And so you need to not only know which oils are in the blend, you have to figure out, well, which oils go in each layers, how many layers are there. The reason you see the number of layers in this blend, I didn't predetermine how many layers were in this blend. I just kept going and going until I felt the blend was done. And that's what you see in this blueprint is what I determined during the blending. I'm done. When I got to this last layer, I said, that's it. It's where it needs to be. And then how did I determine the drop counts in each layer? How did I do that? Well, that's not a discussion for this particular recording. There are recordings of where I do discuss that. Again, I do not recall which ones are available at this particular point, but I will be putting something together that contains all these practical application techniques. So let's take a look at the blend blueprint. And here we are, the blend blueprint. SPE City of Angels Wildfire Trauma Relief Blend Blueprint. And as you can see here, it's obvious, it's pretty simple as you see how it's lined up. Let's just get this a little bit more in the picture here. Okay, so basically, you have your oils lined up in this first column, and this is the list of layers going across in this horizontal. So vertically is the list of oils, horizontally are the list of the layers. The first layer is referred to as the forest layer because it contains all the elements of has a forest, contains all these elements. It contains trees and shrubs and some wildflowers and mosses and birds and deer and streams and soil and rocks, and all types of things. So it's the forest layer. It contains all the elements of the forest. Then the mists go through the forest. They're you do have layer 2, layer 3. You do have that simple assignations as well, but they're also referred to as the first mist, mist number 2, mist number 3, and so forth. This is mist number 4. I left that out. And then the final layer is referred to as the crown layer. So the final mist is the crown layer, the crown on this entire blend, so to speak. And you can see the drop counts that I determined for each of these. And you can see that some oils are in certain layers, but not others. Wherever there's a blank space, you're not adding the oil in that particular layer. So you're only adding the oils in the layers that are shown on the blueprint. You will see some terminology in here. FL stands for floating layer. IS stands for invisible sparks. So a floating layer means that after you added all the oils, let's say mist number 2 over here is an FL, which is a floating layer. And you can see I added cypress, galbanum, lemon, peppermint, pine, rosewood, sage. Let's see what else is down here. Xanthellina. No, xanthellina is not in there. And turmeric. So actually what I'll do here is I'll go to view. I'll make this a little smaller so you can see the whole thing at once. Let's go to Zoom. And I'm at 130. So I'm going to go down just to a small size here so you can see this a little bit better. And so here we are. This is what the entire blend looks like at one time. Blue chamomile through turmeric. And so basically, when you have a floating layer, you add the oils. As you can see, these are the oils: cypress, galbanum, lemon, peppermint, pine, rosewood, sage, and turmeric were added into layer 2, mist number 1. So what do? Instead of swirling it around in Spiritualis, you don't shake the bottle in Spiritualis. See, You swirl it around, holding the bottle upright vertically. You swirl it around in a circle because it's layered. You don't want to shake those layers up like you're making some type of mixed drink of some sort. Not that I'm encouraging anybody to drink mixed drinks, but you're swirling it this way to maintain the horizontality, if there is such a word, of the blend. The horizontal layers, the stratification is maintained. But with a floating layer, you just let it sit overnight. You don't swirl it around. You don't swirl it till the next day when you're going to do the next layer. You swirl it just before adding in the next oils. What's the reason for this? The floating layer is designed to allow the oils in the blend the opportunity to engage and mix themselves, which sounds, wow, that sounds impossible. They're inanimate, aren't they? While in spiritual phytoessential oils are considered to be ensouled. And just like any living thing that is ensouled, it has being. And if it has being, it has consciousness. And if each of the oils have consciousness, they will engage with each other in their way. Maybe not the human mixing type of way, but mixing in a consciousness way that the oils understand on their level. After all, each species on Earth has information about how it needs to exist. You don't know what a rose bush knows. You don't know what a tiger knows. You don't know what an eagle knows. They don't know what you know. Every living thing is imbued with information from the higher worlds. And so you're allowing the oils in the floating layers through their own knowing, the information inherent to being an essential oil within a plant, to engage with the other oils and be able to come to know each other and begin to act as a unit rather than just a group of oils that's thrown together helter-skelter in some way. So there's nothing random about spiritual phytoessential. It is a form of rational mysticism. Some of what is done is very rational. Some of what is involved is very mystical. There is this alchemy aspect to spiritual phytoessential and a rational, very focused rational aspect to it as well. Invisible sparks. Invisible sparks, in this particular case, the invisible sparks oil, IS, it was lemon oil. This is an oil that's not in the body of the blend, which is seen continuously in fairly high numbers. Now, this, by the way, I should tell you that this amount of oil is to make 15 mils. 15 mils, not 5 mils. This was prepared in a 15 mil bottle. The question you may ask is, if I'm going to make 5 mils, should I divide it in 3? Roughly, yes, but the numbers won't work out the same. Why? I can't say I have an explanation as to why, if it's 14 drops of blue chamomile for a 15 mil bottle, why it shouldn't be approximately 5 drops for a 5 mil bottle. I don't know why. But the numbers, it's numerological in some way. There's some type of alchemy in the numbers. And so it could turn out that for the 5 mils, instead of 5 drops, it could be 4 drops, it could be 6 drops. I don't know. It's just different when you're going to make a different quantity of blend, a different volume of blend. The numbers work out in the ballpark, but not precisely the same proportions. So you would have to know how to determine drop counts if you're going to translate this blueprint into a 5 mil blend. Nevertheless, what is invisible sparks? Invisible sparks are oils that are used on very much smaller amounts in certain layers. You can see here, for instance, lavender is 12 drops, 17 drops, and 13 drops. Lemon is just 3 drops, 4 drops, 5 drops. It's down at a much lower level, and it's included to spark or catalyze new reactions within the blend. Not in there in the large amounts, larger quantities that most of the other oils are in there. It's in much smaller, less perceptible amounts in there to act as a catalyst for the blend itself rather than to serve as one of the mainsprings of the blend. So you may ask, well, what about cinnamon? Cinnamon is just 4, 3, 3 in drop counts. And that's because cinnamon is a very strongly scented oil, has a very strong scent intensity. And if you used a lot of it, all you would smell in the blend is cinnamon. So you have to regulate the amounts you're putting in there in order to be able to use it in the blend. And so it blends in with the other oils on a scent level and energy level for that matter as well. But lemon, on the other hand, is not that heavily scented. So when you're going down to 3, 4, 5, you'll barely perceive it in the blend, if at all, on a scent level, but it will act as an invisible spark. So that's what IS is. This just tells you which layers the invisible sparks were added into. And then finally, we have the surrounding essence, which the surrounding essence technique, I believe, is discussed in the member zone. There is a document about that. That will be in this manual as well. But there is an article on my website called the Copaiba oil and the surrounding essence technique. You can go up to my website and read that, and you can understand what the surrounding essence is. It's added to the empty bottle before you do your blending. It's in this case, it's mastic oil, 6 drops in 54 drops of alcohol, swirled around and left for a half an hour a day, whatever you feel, 2 hours, 3 hours a day, whatever you feel is best. Then it's emptied into the sink and left. The bottle is left to stand upside down for half an hour or so. And even though there's nothing at the bottom of the bottle anymore, when you sniff the bottle, you can smell mastic quite strongly because some of it will have clung to the inside surfaces of the bottle, but in an energetic as well as a scent level. And this welcomes all the other oils in. So when you're beginning your blend into the bottle, it's already been warmed up, so to speak, by the mastic oil. They're not coming into some empty glass foreign chamber. They're being welcomed by the mastic oil. And finally, the magic drops, the last drops added in to the blend. In this case, it's Santalina oil. And for the 15 mils, it was 6 drops, is added a few days after the blend has been completed. The blend is allowed to rest and develop for a few days. Finally, the magic drops are added. This is an alchemy technique of Spiritualis. This is an oil that has not been seen, or none of the other oils in the blend have seen this oil yet. They are now a group. They are now a family of oils. And here you're introducing this stranger, this someone no one knows. And it comes in this new dynamic added in the end. All the blend as a whole has to react to this incursion, this introduction of a new, different oil into the blend. And that reaction creates another final dynamic in the blend. So the Santalina itself not only contributes something to the blend proper in terms of its actions and its reaction areas, but it also contributes this catalytic effect, this alchemy catalytic effect, where it stimulates a reaction by all the other oils in the blend to some extent individually, but to a greater extent collectively, to the Santalina, that creates another energetic dynamic. And again, this makes the blend vibrate at a higher level. So that ends my discussion of the City of Angels Wildfire Trauma Relief Blend, parts 1, parts 2, parts 3. I suggest you watch these in the order they were recorded. And again, I do suggest you come back to it more than once if you really want to learn these techniques and get a better understanding of spiritual phytoessencing and how spiritual phytoessencing blends are formulated, used, and blended. With that said, I will be back in a couple of weeks with the first live Zoom class of 2025. I will be discussing spikenard oil, rhythmicity, the whole theme of rhythmicity within spikenard oil and the rhythmic system in the body, why rhythm is an important part, rhythmic living is an important part of staying well. We can look at, and I might as well go back to myself here, instead of this little picture on the side, why rhythm. Health can be described as a state of rhythmicity or a state of rhythm. Disease is a state of loss of rhythm. So this whole idea of rhythm and spikenard oil and why it's one of the most important rhythmicity oils of all the oils we use in spiritual PhytoEssencing. Its specificity for the hypothalamus gland, which is a very important thing to know, and its specificity for the heart and the cycle of systole and diastole, of pumping, filling, pumping, filling. Perhaps the most important oil for that in spiritual PhytoEssencing is spikenard oil. So that would be a very in-depth class on spikenard and on the whole concept of rhythmicity and health and the rhythmic system. What is that in the body? It's an anthroposophical medicine concept called the rhythmic system in the body. And what is it? So we'll find out what that is. And if there's time, I never know if there's time because I generally put together a lot of material. I'm going to discuss rhythmic intermittent fasting from the natural health science system. What is that? I won't go into it now, but you'll have to tune in for that. But rhythmic intermittent fasting could be one of the keys for some of you who need to lose weight to get healthy. Rhythmic intermittent fasting could be one of those pieces that you can use as part of a construct to help you move in the direction of getting back to a weight that is more helpful for you. So with that said, if you have any questions, you know how to contact me. Take care, and we'll be in touch again soon.